So now to the time of our my favorite bit of the podcast. Is your favorite?
Oh, yeah. Well, I like it all.
Yeah. Okay, we got a question in from one of our clients. So I'm going to read it and then we'll iron it out a bit slower so that we know exactly what's going on. Okay, I'm in the process of selling my primary residence in the country to move to a unit I've owned for 30 years in Sydney. So the person's lived in the country, that's their primary residence, and they're moving into a unit in Sydney, which they've also owned for seems like the same amount of time. The unit has never been leased and only used by myself and family. Okay, so they own 2 properties, one in the country, primary residency, and they're going to move into a unit which they also own. I intend to put $600,000 into superannuation for myself, my wife, and then I'll give the balance to my children. Are there any tricks I need to be aware of to avoid any unseen liabilities and incur any tax penalties and the like? I look forward to the advice.
Perfect. All right, let's break it down.
Yep.
So there's a couple of topics in that, I guess. One is capital gains tax on the property. The other one is inheritance tax and super. So there's really 3 areas.
Yeah.
If we look at the property first.
So the first one was they're selling the one in the country.
Yeah.
They've lived in that. That was their primary residency.
Yeah.
So that's exempt.
Yeah, but let's break it down a little bit more than that. So I guess why is it exempt is probably what people want to know. Now, you can have one main residence. Now, they already own a property in Sydney. I'm not sure when they bought the country property. So we'd need to look at the timeline on that.
Yeah.
That's what we'd do to make sure it's exempt. So if the timeline is they bought the property in Sydney first and they own that for a period of time, that would be their main residence for that period of time.
Until they moved to the country.
Until they bought the next property and moved into that, that would then become their main residence for the entire ownership of it.
Yeah.
So because of that, that would be exempt from tax because it's their main residence. If they ever sell the Sydney property, there would be an apportionment of capital gains based on when it was their main residence and when it wasn't their main residence.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So basically, the Sydney property, so the property that they're selling is going to be tax-free because that's going to be their main residency for 100% of the time.
Yep.
The Sydney property, depending on when they bought it, is going to either be partly exempt or not exempt at all.
If they sell it, they may never sell it.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. So the first thing is no tax on the first sale. Next one, they might not sell it. Okay. Then I guess into inheritance tax. So let's say they don't sell that, they never got to pay tax. But then obviously when they end up passing away, whether in 5 years or 100 years, they'll pass on the property to someone else, and then does that person have to pay tax when they die? Or
well, it's more I want to touch on they're going to gift money to their children. So people are always is there tax on gifts and passing money down to the next generation or the asset in this case afterwards as well.
Yeah.
And in Australia, there's no inheritance tax at the moment, so they could gift an amount of money to their children, and there's no tax consequence on that.
Yeah. And then to touch on the super and, pension and stuff like that, if you do give a gift, that is still included in your pension test. So obviously you can go and get the age pension from the government, but obviously they're rolling into super. So it sounds like they're, if they've got any balance anywhere else, it's going to be too high anyway. But the remaining money they gift is still included in their calculation to see if they can get the government age pension. So that's where people get confused. It's because most people know that you're not allowed to gift. I mean, you can gift whatever you want. It's your money. There's no tax on the inheritance and stuff, but it doesn't mean that you can go and give your money to your kids and then go to the government and say, oh, I'm poor. Because the government says, no, you were rich and, you're not going to get it anymore.
Yeah, correct. And if they do pass away with owning that Sydney property, what's the rules there on selling that or handing it down to the children?
No, yeah. So back on the property, yeah. So let's say the Sydney property is there. Let's say they don't sell it. They don't have to pay CGT because they don't sell it. But then if they pass away, as I was saying, 5 or 100 years time, then the property gets pushed down to the next person. The person inherits the cost base. So let's say they bought the Sydney property for 30 years ago, it could be $100,000, right? The person that inherits the cost base, and do they all the exemptions?
CGT, who knows?
Yeah. What's 30? Well, yeah, maybe.
It'd be around the mark, but yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, obviously they need to look at that. But basically they would get that property and they would just inherit the cost base. The third part of the question, I guess, is on the money they're putting into super, is that going to be tax deductible, non-tax deductible? You give it a crack.
Well, there's, as some listeners may know, there's concessional contributions and non-concessional contributions. Concessional means that someone is getting a tax deduction for it ultimately.
So tax deduction outside of super for it.
Outside of super.
Yeah.
So they could put 30 grand in each per year of concessional contributions and claim a tax deduction for it. And the super fund's going to pay tax of 15%. It can be higher when your income is above 250,000, but that will hit that on another topic.
Yeah. They like to make it easy for
No,
it, don't they? Yeah.
Or you can put in money non-concessionally, which means you're not claiming tax deduction, and you can contribute 120 grand a year that way, but you can also bring forward 3 years.
So with the 600,000, obviously, first thing you want to see what's going to be better. Is it going to be better for them to get a deduction outside of super? If it's not, then obviously they're going to go for the one where they're not going to ask you non-concessional, which is the 120. And then that also impacts another tax thing, which I'll just touch on, is like there's taxable and non-taxable amounts in super. So when you pass away, if you've got a untaxable element, your kids or non-dependents will get that tax-free. There's a taxable portion where if you pass away, you've got to pay 15% on any amounts in super to any non-dependents. So if they put it in as the 600,000, as you're saying, where they don't get the tax deduction, then that amount will go to their non-taxable amount when they pass away. And if they put it through as the two $30,000 payments, obviously that's the taxable portion. So they'll get a little bit of a benefit now, but not a benefit when they die.
Perfect. I'm sure the listeners have more questions now than before the question started.
That was actually very, when you broke it down way more detailed than I thought it was going to be.
No, there's a lot into that, but that's the point of,
it's funny, because clients will send you an email, it's literally 2 lines, and there's so many things you got to think of. Before you write back to them. Yeah.
That's where it's important while you're making these decisions and while they're happening that you have these discussions now with the accountants.
Yeah.
To make sure you're not missing anything and make sure you're doing that.
Some little simple things. Yeah. I think it's always a bit more complex as well when you're playing around with super. It just makes it a little bit harder because there's so many rules and stuff with it. But we know them all, so don't worry about that. And if we don't know them, we'll ask my dad. So it's all good.
Perfect. Thanks, Luke.
Awesome. Thanks, mate.
Welcome to a new episode of the podcast, episode 3. We have a very special guest here, Milan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, going well, mate. Milan, as a lot of people in Sydney know, one of the best restaurateurs, owns 2 great restaurants, Sugarcane and Sugar Lane. Can you tell us a bit about your background and how you got into it?
Well, first of all, I finished year 12, I think it was 96. And then I was like, what am I going to do? Because growing up in a Eastern European family, there was no such thing as sitting around and just bludging. And I always had a small passion for cooking, so I decided to undertake a cooking apprenticeship, which started in 97, and I worked around a couple of numerous restaurants and cafes in Sydney before landing a job at Long Grain, which was quite a well-known Thai restaurant in Surrey Hills. I ended up working 6 or 7 years there over 2 stints. And then after that, I sort of got to a point where I've been cooking for about 12 years. I was like, okay, what do I do with myself? And then branched out and opened first Sugarcane outpost in Surrey Hills.
How did you go with that? Because that one's no longer around, but you've moved it to Coogee. Did you open that by yourself, or do you have a business partner? Or?
Yeah, I opened it by myself, and I had a partner who was like a small shareholder who was a working partner, another chef of mine. We opened it at the worst time possible because it was just prior to the GFC. Oh. So then as soon as that hit, the lunch trade went out the window, and then we had to solely rely on dinner clientele. It was a much smaller restaurant than Coogee, but it sort of helped build what I have today. So Coogee's success, I think, is off the back of the success it had in Surrey Hills.
Yeah, that must have been a very difficult time. So how did you what practical things did you actually do to get through that GFC time?
Well, I guess the most important thing was just managing the costs against your sales. So, when we first started, the lunches were pretty solid. We're getting a lot of those corporate lunches in. Then that stopped, and then we sort of dropped our hours as well to accommodate. Had to maybe reshuffle some staff, and then just hope for the best and really maximize what we were getting in return from our dinner clientele. And I think in the end, we ended up just dropping most lunches and then just did the Friday lunch. So
yeah, perfect. How quickly did you make those decisions? Because obviously it's difficult at the time. Did you just make the call straight away, or you just changed
I
a little
think
bit?
it took us a couple of weeks,
Mm.
because no one knew what was going to happen and the extent of it all. And then once we realised, oh shit, this is not going to come back. It's going to be a long burn. We had to just sort of step in and start making some moves. Yep.
In those early days, what sort of did you make many mistakes? And
Can
you talk us through any you made?
I look back now and, I was so green then. You only know as much as you know. And, that was a very long time ago. Obviously, I've got a lot more experience now. Making mistakes, planning, fit out, kitchen configuration, bar. Yeah, there's been heaps. And then
Running a restaurant is, I'd imagine, I've never run one, very difficult. But how do you, what sets you guys apart from other restaurants?
I think it's just like what I try to do with both the restaurants is, like I always say to the staff, we just got to make sure that we're offering the same consistent product with a consistent service every time. And, I think a lot of the successes come from that. Like, I know myself, I've been to many places where I've had a great meal one time, gone back 3 months later, and I've had a very average, mediocre meal. So we just try to keep focusing on that, and also generous portion sizes for us works really well, which I think people really appreciate.
I've never been more full than when I've left Sugarcane. But I can still keep fitting more in, especially that crispy chicken. You're very quick, because we work together pretty closely. You're pretty quick at shifting and making calls, and you brought in the bottomless. Why did you make that call?
I just think the lunches, like our dinner trade, are really solid. Our lunches were hit and miss, and we only do 3 lunches, Friday to Sunday. And I just thought, we'll give it a go just to see how the public reacts, how the locals react. So then I got some female friends, to create a little video through my marketing girl, and she made a really good reel online, and that went nuts. It went gangbusters, and looking at the back end of it, I can see all the bookings that have gone through that, and that reel by far has smashed any other reel we've ever put out there. So obviously, it's been very successful for the business.
Yeah, I think it from going from Surrey Hills, Coogee, Sugar Lane, and then just shifting when you need to. That's why you've been successful, isn't it? One of the reasons.
Yeah, definitely. I had Surrey Hills and I was content there and things were going good. And then I moved to Coogee and I had a young family. And then I still remember this day, we were down at the beach. It was a nice afternoon. I was having the night off and I was trying to get something to eat. And there wasn't really that many places. I think the Pav had just opened. And then we went into the site that Sugarcane is. And it was really hard to get a decent meal. And I thought, it was a Greek restaurant. We had dinner there. The food was okay. But I saw the space and I thought, you know what? A Sugarcane restaurant will do really well here. And one thing led to another. And here I am now, 7 or 8 years later. And, business is still going very strong. We have a good local following. We have a good interstate following, good international following. And then off the back of that, the opportunity came at Lane Cove where the council had this new development coming and they asked, would I be interested in opening a second outpost? And they've been really good to work with. They supported me from the start, and that's also been a very good success it was a bit tricky because we opened during COVID, so it was a bit of a stop-start. And then after that, the ball got rolling and, business turned and things are looking up.
What I'm hearing, Milan, is you only open in difficult periods of time. There's good periods of time, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe my third one will open during a good period. I don't know when that will be, though.
Are you looking at a third one or are you happy at the moment?
I'm happy at the moment. Yeah.
You touched on the family briefly. How do you balance that with you got 2 kids, very active in football, other things?
That's I think that's the biggest problem you sort of face, especially hospitality, because it's a lot of nighttime work. It's not like you work sort of, the business hours. You got sort of some nights free. I'm sure you still work some of them. But, I've got a good team around me. So I sort of, rely on them to keep the business going when I'm not there. And, I've got an okay balance. I have a couple of nights off a week. I spend time with the boys, but I'm very fortunate as well. I do a lot of the work from Coogee, and I live very close to home, so I can duck out and do stuff. And if I've got to go do a school run or something like that, like I'm still in the area to lend a hand when required.
Have you got the boys into the restaurant yet to cook some dishes? Or
Not yet, but I was just talking to my wife last week about it, and I think they're 12 and 14, so maybe a little bit young. They've done the market run with me a few times, but I think in the next year or two, I'll start exploiting that a bit more.
How did the financial management and the accounting and the tax side, did that come naturally to you? Or
I was always good at numbers, like even through high school, I was always in like an advanced maths and stuff like that. So, but no, the business, and it's a different kettle of fish. Like you said, running a restaurant is really hard work, right? Looking after suppliers or fit outs, staff. The last thing you worry about is what you just said. So I think in the first couple of years, I felt like I was chasing my tail a lot. And then you've got to sort of try to project ahead. You want to be ahead. And it's hard. And even now I still struggle. That's why I have people like you and Joe you and Luke looking after it, because it is difficult and it's very complicated and things are always changing, and trying to keep up with it all can be a bit of a pain.
what do you track financially? Not necessarily what we look at, but on a day-to-day basis, how do you track your performance?
Well, I look at I can sort of know like how many covers we've got booked that night, the day of the week, how many staff we have on. Obviously, at the start of the week, we run a leaner roster. As the week builds up, we bring in more staff to cater for the masses. So I look at that and I know where it's got to be from a turnover perspective, because I've been in the game for a while. So, but it doesn't always go to plan. Some weeks the customers spend more, some weeks they spend less. But yeah, and then I just follow the weekly sales that come through the POS, and that I've got a good gauge as to how that reflects on all other costs.
If someone's starting a restaurant and they want to understand all these things, or what are they going to be looking at first of making sure they get right? Is it location? Is it menu? What are they looking at?
Well, I think the location is the most important, and then like the location, the offering, the space as well, the size of the space, the shape. Has it got sun? Where it is? Is it a busy thoroughfare? There's a lot of things to take into, and what's around it compared to what they're offering. And there's no point of opening, modern like a new bistro right next to a really popular good one as well, because you're going to be up against it from the start.
So yeah, the Sugarcane location right next to the beach, that's obviously been important for the success. But the food is amazing there, obviously. And how are you getting that consistent food? Like you're saying, you wanted consistent food every time. How are you sort of doing that? Is it process driven? Is it the staff are very well trained? How do you get to that?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both, the process and the staff. Like I've had long-term staff who have been with me for many years, and they know like what it takes and the expectation and what needs to be put out to the customers. So that's one of the biggest advantages, because it's an industry where it's forever revolving. Staff are coming in and out, but we've got a core group who've been there for a long time. So they drive it, and then all the other staff that come in and out are the ones who we sort of spend a lot of time teaching and explaining the Sugarcane, Sugar Lane way and what the expectations are and what the customers want.
Some of those customers are quite famous, like the Sydney Swans players. Why is your restaurant their choice of go-to?
I just think it's sort of on the map for that area. Like for what you get, for the price you pay, I think the value's there, and people look for that these days. And then I think it's just more and more people talk about it. So, and then I have a couple of friends in there, and I sort of drag them down, and it's just that dominoes effect.
Did you ever think you ever want to play for the Swans? I know your kids are in the academy.
No. I was always a soccer player going up out west. There was no way I was playing
Serbians
AFL.
aren't allowed to play AFL, are they?
No. It was soccer.
What's the best part of running a business? Because people, they might not, they want to do it. It takes guts as well. But what's the best part, do you think?
Well, I think the best part is, when you do a big night, it's a busy night, everything goes smoothly, everything goes to plan. You get a lot of good feedback and you see people like lining up to enter your restaurant. Or, there's a bit of like, like you said, you put your life on the line, you're putting everything else on the line to front up this business, which I think, hospitality business is about 80 or 90% of them die in the first year or two. So it's a big risk. So when you see the rewards coming back, from your sales, the success of your business, bumping into people on the street and, oh, you own Sugarcane. I just want to let you know that's our favorite restaurant. And I get more and more of that. So I think that's definitely.
So you still get the adrenaline hit of having a busy night and like that. That's a big part for you.
Yeah, it is. It is when it goes good. Doesn't always happen like that, but yeah, there's the adrenaline is there, and it gives you that buzz. And that's the industry we're in. That's why a lot of people, you find yourself just stuck in it. Like some people leave and you find them coming back because they try a different industry, they try a different career, and they're like, oh, nah, like they miss the adrenaline and the buzz of the hospo industry.
They try accounting and they realize it's boring.
And they run back, yeah.
It's not, but yeah, it's not for everyone. We've got a question that we ask everyone, and I think I know the answer for you because I think I know the answer, but let's see what it is. What's your least favorite tax and why? You can be honest.
Payroll tax. Yeah.
Why is that?
I just think it's a piss take, like it's, like if you've got a great business, right, and you want to grow this business, I feel like it's just like a little bit of a handbrake, not allowing people to sort of expand or push whatever they've got further, or open a second or a third, or open a bigger restaurant because, they've got to, oh no, man, if I get to that, I'm going to have to pay this payroll tax. And I just think, we pay a lot of taxes here, and that one there is I think it's just a massive cash grab.
It is, and the fact is they group all your entities together so quickly. Yeah. Even if there's two directors and one of them is the director on another company, they try to group them together. I think that's really one of the disadvantages of it. And yeah, as you say, like you really, they try to limit your growth and you're trying to hire more people, so it doesn't make sense.
And like we are all small businesses, right? So like making a profit is very difficult. By the time you cover all the overheads, all your entitlement, like. So, if you're paying, like it's just something that you could do with that money, because you are paying all your other entitlements. It's not like you're not paying. It's not like you're cutting someone's tax, or like they are making the money. I just believe that it's just a big kick in the guts, that one. And you see my replies to the emails when you send them to me. They're never positive.
You do approve it pretty quickly, but you're good like that.
Well, I have to approve it because I've got no choice. But if there was a disapprove button, I'd very quickly press it.
So yeah, here with Milan, client of ours, and owns a couple of restaurants. Just wanted to go through, obviously, like you've been a client for a long time. And like when we first started, I don't know if you remember, I think it was like middle of COVID. And I was driving to your restaurant. I was picking up a big bag, like a paper bag of receipts. And like, let us know if you need more time to prep for this one. Yeah. But like I was picking up a big paper bag of receipts, and then I was taking him to like get them scanned and stuff. Like, how's that? Like then we got Joe involved. Obviously Joe's like a lot better in our office at process and stuff. So how does your receipts thing work now?
Oh yeah, we just use HubDoc, which is something that you guys set up, which is a great system. Like we build up our receipts and like once a week, and then we just sit there. We take a photo with either our phone or our iPad, and it automatically goes into HubDoc, which then you guys extract all that info for my Xero and stuff. But it's pain free, it's user free. I sometimes, when I'm filling up petrol, like I'll get a receipt, I'll sit in the car and I'll take the photo straight away, upload it, and then I just throw the receipt out. Whereas before, I'd forever be emptying my wallet with about 30 different invoices, the restaurant invoices, and like we get deliveries every day, heaps of deliveries. So, which means there's a huge trail of paperwork, and it does get lost, right? It doesn't matter what process you put in, a couple of invoices will go missing. Whereas I find like now, like we've got a process in hand, and some of the boys sometimes they have 10 minutes on a Wednesday, and they'll just upload 10 of them get rid of them, and like just do it in stages.
So compared to what you were doing before, like, you know what I mean? So like with your old accountant,
Yeah.
How much easier you reckon it is?
Oh, much easier.
Yeah.
It's just seamless. It's very user friendly.
Yeah, and there's
whoever
less
you
mistakes
show,
and stuff.
Everyone knows how to use a device.
Yeah.
Everyone knows how to take a photo.
Yeah.
So that's all that's involved. Take a photo, upload it, it's done. You can throw that invoice out.
All right, yeah. So then I guess the next stage in the AP process, I was going to ask, like, did you used to load your own payments or the other?
Yeah, I used to load my own payments.
Yeah, and then so the way that we've set up the process is like we load the payments for you now.
Yeah.
Which I mean, like, it usually happens pretty well, but like, there's only one time that you were overseas and Joe was overseas and he got locked out, and that was a bit of a headache.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, how's that go? So like, we load the ABA file for you. You just log in, check the invoices.
Yeah, like I like you send me the file first. I have a look at it to make sure all the supplies have been paid. Like I like to stay on top of it with the suppliers. I don't like to be behind.
Nah, that's one thing I know about Milan.
And like, but then it's sort of, and I just it's an easy process. I open my banking file. It's there. I upload it. It asks me for my PIN, and then it's done, and then it rolls in the next day. But like I always say to the suppliers, like, I pay you on time all the time.
Yeah.
But when I need something, I want it done. So it sort of helps me. Yeah. As a bargaining tool with them. Whereas,
and I know for like the restaurant business, like, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of people will use, like their providers as cash flow partners, like, which is like, so obviously paying up front. Does it work for you? Does that help?
Yeah. We always get discounts as well.
Oh, perfect.
And we get a better pricing structure. Whereas I know I've worked in the past with restaurants that have like 60 or 90 days, and then, like you've got the veg man knocking on the door saying, "Mate, I'm not going to give you any more deliveries," and then the boss would chip away, pay a couple of invoices, but then I'll be like, "Mate, we missed something on the order. Can you bring this?" And he's like, "Nah, I'm not going to do that for you. Like, why am I going to help you out if you're not helping me?" Sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So Joe goes to your restaurant over like Coogee, like weekly, right? And then like monthly, does he? Yeah, and takes you through the month end report. Yeah. So like, what sort of ratios do you look at in the month end report, and like, is that like still getting adjusted? Still happy with it?
Yeah. So we look at
wages, revenue to wages, right?
The percentage of sales to alcohol. Sorry, the percentage of sales food to beverage.
Food to beverage. Okay,
that's one of them.
Yep.
And then the cost of goods. As a whole.
Yep. That gives you your gross margin, like how much you're making on the alcohol and the food, right?
Yep. And then the wage costs.
Wage ratio.
Yeah.
And you do that monthly now? Like, I remember you doing it weekly for a little bit.
Yeah, no, we do it monthly.
Okay, cool.
Sort of, but it's...
Is it because it's like things, when the things are going well, you can zoom out a bit and then like...
I just think it's like especially Coogee, like, it's quite consistent every, you know what I mean? So I sort of know the roster's not going to change this week to last week.
Yep.
And the sales, some weeks the sales are $500 apart. It's unbelievable how close they get, so... I know what
that is pretty crazy.
I know, and it's not. That's an example, but it happens quite often.
Yeah.
So I sort of know where it's at anyway. But it's just sometimes better just to go through it on a piece of paper, have a look at the exact figures, and then you fix the overheads and stuff like that, and go from there.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
For people that are listening, keen to try out your food, well, firstly, like, it might be good to tell them what the food is.
Okay. So it's sort of Southeast Asian. We sort of go through, some Thai dishes, some Indo, some Malaysians. Like, just, it's a big melting pot. And it's food made to share. We start off with some raw seafood, then there's some little entrees, bite-sized pieces, and then we'll just move on to the heavier bits.
And where can they find them? Where can they find you?
Well, Sugarcane Coogee is on the corner of Carr and Arden Street, just across over from the Crown Plaza, and Sugar Lane is at the Canopy in Lane Cove.
Thanks very much, Milan. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you.